Hello, YouTube. We have a playoff. We have a Barstool Sports Arizona Bowl. We're talking college football. I want you to like. I want you to subscribe. I want you to do all those good things that help us out on YouTube and enjoy the show.
And go to barstool.tv and watch the Arizona Bowl tomorrow.
4:30 Eastern time. Hi, group.
Hello, Brandon. Hello,
Hey.
Jack.
How was your Christmas, Kayce?
It was good. I was actually talking to Noah before we started recording that, and I'm sure you appreciate this too, that as you get older, and I mean, I know you appreciate it even more because you have a family, it's just like Christmas just happens. And then afterwards, you're just like, all right, I guess that was something that happened last week.
Yeah, it's an event in my house, and when it's over, it's like, oh, okay, well, that was a lot of buildup, and then now we just got to throw away a lot of boxes. So, yeah, but we're in the midst of an interesting week. You're now in the. I think we're getting to the good bowls now, and you're getting 3 to 4 bowl games a day, and you're getting wall-to-wall football action like we're sitting here right now, and I believe. There's a bowl game kicking off shortly. Syracuse, Minnesota, I think is kicking off. So
Yeah, in 2 hours or so, but yeah.
The time changed. I thought it started at 12 Eastern. It must start at 2 Eastern, 12 Mountain Time. Whenever I stray from a time zone, I never know what time it is.
No,
Yeah,
I don't feel bad, but I do have the same reaction to
You know what the problem is, Jack? You know what the problem is?
Tell me.
When you go somewhere and then you look up something on a schedule, right? The computer magically tells you what time it starts in the time zone that you're in.
I know.
That's a
But
good
I'm
thing.
used to it telling me what time it starts Eastern time. So when it said it starts at noon, I'm like, okay, well, it starts at Eastern.
Oh, now that makes a lot of sense. But also, you should make sure everything that you tell people what's going on in Arizona, make sure to mention Eastern time zone for them too. Because Kayce, when Kayce went to the Louisiana casino, she said, yeah, I mean 5 Eastern, we'll be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys made so much fun of me, but when you're in a different time zone, it is a little bit different. We gotta stay on the same page here, Brandon.
All right. We have 2 massive playoff games coming up on Saturday. Y'all want to talk about them?
I think we should probably, yeah. And I
Let's
hope
do it.
everybody had a nice holiday. And this week, if you're listening to this, it is a Thursday.
Oh, shut up. Your holiday's over. All right, let's go. Hello and welcome to Unnecessary Roughness, Barstool's college football podcast, brought to you by High Noon Hard Seltzer. We are in the desert right now getting ready for the Barstool Sports Arizona Bowl, and I'm sure the High Noon will be a-flowing. High Noon is the best drink for college football. So if you're going to a bowl game, or if you're just going to a friend's house to watch it, or if you're just sitting in your house and watching it at your remarkable outdoor TV setup that I'm very jealous of and I want at my house, make sure you get a pack of High Noon. Make sure you get the tailgate pack. You can try the pear, the cranberry, or you can just try any of the delicious, wonderful, awesome flavors that High Noon has. They have the peach, the lime, the lemon, the watermelon, the passion fruit, on and on and on. High Noon has the best flavors, the best drinks, the best everything, because it's real juice, real vodka for real people like you and me, Kayce Smith.
We are real people. And I know in the cold open, you said, oh, the holidays are over, but everybody knows that the week between Christmas and New Year's is just, it's like a Bermuda Triangle of time. You don't know what day it is. I know some people have to go back to work and that makes sense. But if you don't, and you have this break, you don't know what day it is, but you do know that it's a good day to watch football and grab High Noons. Every single day, there's games on all day. Why not just start the day with a High Noon, end the day with a High Noon?
What was the best gift you got?
Well, I know what I'm supposed to say.
No, you say whatever you want.
Supposed to say, oh, all the things that people are buying for my baby that's coming in very quickly in just a few short weeks. I'd say the one that I appreciate the most is I got an Apple Watch. I never thought I'd be an Apple Watch person, but my boyfriend got it for me because he said he knows I'm going to go crazy about working out when the baby's here. And so I was like, well, that was really nice of you to think about how obsessive compulsive I'm going to be at that point. So I'd say an Apple Watch, but
wow, you took that really well.
What?
Yeah,
you took that really well because what he would it some neurotic women would have taken it like, oh, you think I'm going to be ugly when the baby's here and you want me to work out? That's what's
Well, I will say if that came out of nowhere, if he said that just like from the clouds, then I might have felt differently. But he also hears me talk every single day about how I cannot wait to get back in the gym. And it's probably very annoying. So my guess is he was like, I just constantly talk about it. I'm that person where it's like, oh, I just want to work out. I want to work out. So yes, had he just been like, hey, by the way, I'm going to get you a gym membership in February, that would have been different. But this was more of just like, I know that you're obsessed with this idea. Here's something to help you.
You imagine just a random husband walking up to his wife, here for after when the baby's born, here's a gym membership and here's an Apple Watch and here's some shoes because I know you're going to work out all the time.
Well, you remember, wasn't it last year, and I won't say the company, but wasn't it last year that a specific fitness company got in a lot of trouble because they had a commercial where the husband gifted the wife this exercise equipment?
Yes.
Yeah. And it became like this whole thing about how it was like a man was telling a woman she needed to work out. So there definitely is that. But I will say that I've been the one that's talked about it to the point where I think the gift was more of just like a, hey, shut up. You'll get to that point. This will help you with it.
All right.
What was your favorite gift, Brandon?
Well,
kid?
I bought my wife and you helped me pick out what I bought my wife again. But anyway, what my wife bought me was, I told her, hey, don't buy me anything. I want a new TV. I want a new Sony Bravia TV. And I went and got me a Sony Bravia TV. So, that's what I got.
Here's my dumbass. What makes that TV so special?
It's OLED. It's like the hotness. It's sharp and it's a good TV.
Did she like her Tiffany gift?
Oh yeah.
The blue.
When I brought the bag in the house, she saw it from like 30 feet away and said, I know what that bag means. And I didn't know that Tiffany had an iconic bag.
You didn't know that?
Brandon,
No.
Come on.
It's like the most iconic bag in the world, I would say. It's, you should know it because it's almost the same powder blue as Ole Miss. And you should just say, I mean, your powder blue that you're so proud of is more known for being a jewelry.
Tiffany, I try to tell you, Tiffany blue, a person that knows Tiffany, that loves Tiffany, can spot that from miles away.
All right. Before
I
we
love
get to
Jack,
the
by the
playoff
way. I love that Jack knows that. It just, the allure of Jack Mac is so, it just gets more and more interesting the more I know him. He knows everything, and he knows a lot more things that girls like and know than you would. Like when you first meet Jack, you're like, this is a sports guy, he's a gambling guy. No, he's very in tune with the female psyche.
Yeah, well, he's following all the Clemson girlfriends on Twitter. How can he not be?
Well, they've been graduated for a minute. I've been off them.
Well, who have you moved on to?
There's not really. I was expecting somebody to pop up, but no one's really taken the throne. But one's pregnant now. I wish them all the best. I got into literally a tiff or like a kind of a online thing with one of them. I got blocked by one of them, but she was the one that cheated on KJ Henry, or she didn't cheat, but they broke up and she went to some bad NBA player who doesn't stink, or who does stink.
All right.
The fact that Jack said all of that and then sipped that mug, whether it was coffee, tea, whatever, tells you all you need to know. Like, that was so perfect.
Brandon, did you see my tweet last night about Ole Miss, the one with the train going down?
Yeah, I did. That was good. That was good. I would have. I probably would have tweeted that myself if I had been awake. But that was.
I know. You had a long day traveling.
Your Ole Miss tweets get numbies.
Yes, they do.
Thank you.
No, yeah, I mean, Ole Miss is just, maybe they should play every bowl game. Did you see Lane assault that referee?
Yes.
Disgusting. He grabbed his shirt and they didn't throw a penalty. Disgusting.
My new favorite Brandon Walker thing, which is not new because it's been going on for a while, but it's like clockwork. In the group text, if there is a picture of Lane Kiffin, doesn't matter what the context is, it doesn't matter if it, like, Lane could just be in the background, Brandon, and you think this man is hot.
The guy's not hot. I'm sorry. It's crazy that you think
it's just
think he's hot.
We could be talking about like like the world ending in Oxford. And if Lane Kiffin is in the picture, that will be your response.
It's just insane that you and Katie think he's hot. That's all.
It's not
insane.
just us, it's everybody.
No, it's not. It's not.
Jack,
Don't put that.
it's everybody.
Don't put that evil on everybody else.
Jack, the female psyche.
No, I mean, I think he's like more than an attractive guy for how old he is. And then on top of it, his status, he's funny, he's quirky. Like he's hot, objectively hot.
See, the female psyche, Jack gets it.
Crazy. This is insane. It's insane. All right. So let's talk about business first. We're going to talk about a couple bowl games, and then we're going to dive into our playoff preview. But we are in Tucson, Arizona to get ready for the Barstool Sports Arizona Bowl, the first of its kind. Last year we would have had one. COVID got us, but not this year. We are all in Tucson. This hotel is crawling with Barstool people and all of our groupies and our fans. I saw a bunch of girls out there with Lenny signs. But it is Barstool Sports Arizona Bowl, and it is Wyoming and Ohio, a MAC team against Wyoming. And it's going to be, I was in Laramie last week interviewing Wyoming and everything. So I'm a little biased. I met my guys, and I guess I'm a Cowboy now.
I was about to say, did you learn to love that team, or did the weather make you learn to hate everything about it?
Well, the weather was fine when I was there. It was like 30 degrees. They made me leave early. I had to leave early to get away from that massive blizzard that came in and swept in through Wyoming last week. So I was able to get out. It was beautiful in Laramie. I tell you what, whenever I get out of that godforsaken hellhole city we live in,
oh please,
and I get to go to places like Tucson or Laramie, Wyoming, I realize these are my people. Y'all are not my people. Laramie, Wyoming is my people. 30,000 people in the middle of goddamn nowhere. That's where I want to be.
And I'm the complete opposite. And I think Jack's probably the complete opposite too. When I get away from the East Coast and from New York City, I can't wait to get back.
Not me.
I like getting away, but I also like where I live. But I understand that sometimes Brandon it's not his place, whatever.
It's not his place. I would love to
Likes
visit
it a little bit more than he leads on, but
yeah. I would love to visit Wyoming for a short period of time, and then I'm happy to come back.
Oh, I could, if somebody said tomorrow, Brandon, I'm going to give you a ranch in Wyoming, but you can't ever go back east. But you got to go live there. I'd leave tomorrow.
How would you get your Chick-fil-A?
They got Chick-fil-A in Wyoming.
They have Chick-fil-A that they can get to your ranch.
There was one in Wyoming. We looked it up.
We did look it up.
It's probably in Cheyenne or something. I don't know where.
I think it's in Cheyenne. Yeah.
I feel like you like your Uber Eats too much. How would you get that delivered out to your?
Oh, I would change it. We didn't have Uber Eats in Mississippi. I lived happily for 40 years.
Well, but your mama probably cooked for you the whole time.
Well, I'll take my mama to Wyoming.
Your mom and your wife probably cooked for you the whole time. So
yeah, that's fine. I don't care. So we got Wyoming and Ohio in the Barstool Sports Arizona Bowl. And if you look at it, the pundits don't know what to do with it. It's pretty much almost a pick 'em. It's right at it's been hovering at 1.5, 2, stuff like that. I like this Wyoming team. I met the quarterback last week, and I had him do the gritty, and he did it very well. So if a team has a white quarterback who can do the gritty, does that put them ahead of the other team, do you think, Jack?
Depends. The gritty's like universal now. It's like if he could do it last year, it would be impressive. But that is a great scouting report. Like that's what separates us from the others. Like you think Fox is going in there and asking Max Duggan to gritty?
No. And it not only separates the fact that you asked him to do it, that you're basing your opinion on him as an athlete because he can do it.
Well, I have more. So their best offensive lineman is an Eagle Scout, and his project was he built a wall for a church. They had a dilapidated wall, so he tore it down and built it.
I love walls.
Yeah. Let's see. Wyoming has a redshirt freshman named Buck Coors. Buck Coors is his name.
That's his real name.
That's his name. And so I'm just saying.
His government name is Buck Coors.
Buck Coors, yes.
That's awesome.
So, and I sat down with the Wyoming coach last week, and he was, when it comes to like Barstool and what we do, he wasn't exactly excited about it, but he said, some young people tell me you guys are good, so I'm going to let you interview my players, but I'm watching you. So I was like, okay, coach. All right. All right.
Oh yeah, that we do forget that sometimes, that we don't have the shiniest reputation across the board.
So we'll have Dan and Dave on the call with Jake Marsh. He'll be doing the play-by-play. Dan and Dave will be on the color commentary. Casey Smith, myself, PFT, and Will Compton will be the first faces you see. Probably we'll be on the pregame desk and the halftime desk. So we'll be doing the 30-minute pregame show and the halftime show. We have some fun stuff. You'll be able to see my bull riding video, and it's all its glory in that pregame video, I guess. Do y'all want to see the bruise?
Yeah, I do want to see it. I was going to ask you that, but I also, every time I ask, I feel it's weird that I'm asking you to take your pants off.
Oh my! Oh,
My
holy
God.
crap. Oh my God!
It's gotten worse, and I know that's how bruises work, but it's been
Is
it's
that
been a
internal
week?
bleeding?
I don't know. It's getting worse.
Brandon, I think there's a CVS close to here. I'm gonna either go get it or have Katie get it. There's some gel you need that's gonna help with that.
I don't think gel's going to do anything to this.
No, it's like 4. It's gonna help with the pain too, but it's like 4 bruises. You need
Right.
something that might never go
There's
away.
gonna be a doctor watching this, and he's gonna like hit us up on the side and be like, "Brandon needs to go to the hospital."
Yeah.
Like, there's no. It's not like, oh, that's a bad bruise. No, he has to go to the hospital.
It's been like a week and a few days, and I feel like, I know bruises stick around for a long time, but don't they usually start turning colors by now? Like yours is just getting darker red.
No, it's actually getting lighter. It was black for a while.
But then they turn like green and yellow a little bit. It's so fucking weird. But like that is,
Yeah. That's what I do for content.
that's alarming. So with all that being said, it would be crazy for you to not take Wyoming.
Oh, I'm taking Wyoming. Oh
Yeah.
my God, I'm taking Wyoming. Yeah, everything about me is taking Wyoming. I might be their mascot tomorrow. I might ride out on their horse.
I did an interview with the Mountain West Network, a girl named Bridget. She was awesome. And she said, I know on the college football show, the last time you guys recorded in studio, you said Ohio. And I said, well, to be completely honest, that's because we've not done any shows with Barstool at Mountain West games. We've only done it at MAC. We love the MACtion. So I was going solely on the conference. But then now watching the content that's come out of Wyoming, and when you actually look at like what's happening on the field and all the X's and O's types of things, which we will talk about a little bit throughout the game. I think I have to take Wyoming. I think I love Wyoming.
Well, I just want to say one thing about that. Bridget is one of my very favorite female names, and you have never in your life seen an unattractive Bridget. They're all attractive. I don't know how they pull it off. I don't know how parents know, but when they name them Bridget, they're gonna be attractive.
Yeah, she was very, very pretty, very nice. Loves Barstool, listens to this podcast. So she was a good Bridget, that's for sure. But she said, she was like, we hope we can sway you. And I said, well, just doing this interview with you helps, but also Wyoming doing all the Barstool content too, like that helps. Like that's also just like, this bowl season, any bowl season, it's like these teams have to go and, most of them are working with ESPN and whatever else. But to know that a team was excited to be able to recreate the dumb content that we do on a daily basis made me like them way more.
Well, the players should be like, the players, especially for these two schools, like, they'll probably have some journalists come in here and there, but, they're not covered as much as like an Ohio State or TCU or Michigan or Georgia. So when somebody comes in and then on top of it, it's somebody that's not going to be the boring guy or girl. Not Bridget seems like she was like definitely more entertaining than like the local journalist for the Gazette of whatever Laramie, Wyoming. But when somebody like Brandon or Caleb or Dave or Dan or Casey or whatever comes in, probably like, oh, this is fun. And everybody likes their ego stroked a little bit. So we go in there and we just go hit up Buck Coors. Yeah, it's cool.
Buck Coors, that has to be an all-time name. I know we throw around all-time names probably too loosely on this show and at Barstool, but Buck Coors has to actually be one. Does he have a mullet? Does he have a mullet, Brandon?
No, I didn't actually meet him. I didn't meet him. Did you see the picture of the stadium? The Barstool College Football Show just tweeted it.
No, let me go
The
look.
stadium with the Barstool logo at center field or midfield. Looks pretty good.
It is like obviously this is like mega cool and thinking about it all, but once you see the actual Barstool logo all over the stadium, and now I'm about to see it on the field, it's like, oh man, this is really happening. And it's,
That is
I don't know,
so
it's
cool.
pretty cool, at least. And I mean, obviously it's pretty good. Yeah, look at this. Like, we'll tweet it out from Unnecessary Roughness, but the Barstool logo in the middle of a Power 5 football field. It's
also gigantic.
Yeah,
it is gigantic.
It feels like it's much bigger than your average midfield logo.
You know why? The merch team did it. They needed to make sure that the Barstool logo.
Yeah, the merch team made it as big as possible. I mean, that logo is 20 yards wide.
All right. So
that is a gigantic logo.
Let's we can talk about Arkansas's incredible bowl game in a minute. Let's talk about the playoff. Let's talk about the two games that are going to really redefine this season. Because you can talk about Kansas State and Alabama and Florida State and Oklahoma. Nothing that happens in those games defines what the 2022 season is remembered for. What it would be remembered for is what happens on the two games on Saturday, and that is Michigan TCU. It is Ohio State Georgia. Michigan TCU up first. Ohio State Georgia in the nightcap at 8:00 Eastern from the Peach Bowl in Atlanta. All right. Here's how I'll start the discussion. Kayce, I'll just ask you simply. We'll choose which game to talk about based on the way you answer this question. Of the two games, Ohio State, Georgia, Michigan, TCU, which one do you think will be closer?
I go back and forth with this a lot, but I think officially I have landed on, I believe that TCU, Michigan will be a closer game.
I'm glad you said that. Jack is also nodding his head in approval. Jack, do you believe that to be true as well?
Yeah, I mean, I have a take on Ohio State, Georgia that we can save, but let's go to TCU, Michigan. I think it's going to be
Jack,
close.
do you feel like I do though, where it's like when you really, I mean, because now we're close enough, but since we've been talking about this for what it feels like forever, but basically a month, that it's gone back and forth where you look at both of these games and I can convince myself either way of both. But what I know from the very beginning is how I feel about Ohio State. And so I do think that Michigan TCU will be closer. I also think, and this is that our interview with Max Duggan is swaying me a little bit. And I know that it shouldn't, but Max Duggan coming on this podcast and how much we liked him and how awesome he was is infiltrating my mind when I think about this game.
Okay.
Whether that's fair or not, that's just the truth.
So I do think one of these games is going to be very close, and I think one of these games is going to be a blowout. I think TCU Michigan is the blowout. I think Michigan's about to beat the piss out of TCU. I think I look at these two teams, and if you look statistically at these teams, and I know statistics don't tell the whole story, and when you get between the white lines, do statistics matter? No, not really. But I look at Michigan's statistical profile and TCU's statistical profile, and Michigan has the profile of an elite playoff team. Just down the list, and scoring offense, they're 7th in the country, and scoring defense, they're – where's my other sheet? In scoring defense, they're in total defense, Michigan's 3rd in the country. In total offense, they're 27th in the country. And rush defense, 3rd. And pass defense, 22nd. And total defense, 3rd. And scoring defense, 7th. Like, Michigan's entire team is in that top 20 across the board, whether it's offense, whether it's defense. If you look at TCU and you look at the statistical story of TCU, you wonder how this team made it here. Like, I'm not saying, again, statistics don't tell the whole story. They never do. But they do paint a picture of what a team's games are like. And I look at TCU, their defense is 74th in the country. There's 73 defenses better than TCU's. They're 83rd in pass D. They're 64th in run D. Like, Michigan's running offense is elite. And I don't see where TCU is going to slow this team down, and Michigan's defense will be far, way, way, way superior to anything TCU has faced this year. I think Michigan wins this game by 25, 30 points.
I think Michigan is going to win. When I say it's close, I think that, and we always talk about blowouts in the semifinals, and it really just depends on what you consider that to be. And we're not going to run back the Michigan-Ohio State conversation because, like you mentioned, that game does not matter anymore. The thing that scares me for TCU is that Michigan there's a lot of similarities in the style of play, the offense that they run to Kansas State. We've seen that, but they do it better. Michigan does it better than what Kansas State did. In Kansas State, we saw what happened in the Big 12 championship. There's just something about the way that the offense explodes for TCU that leads me to believe that, we talk about Ohio State, Michigan a lot because it is a barometer of what could potentially happen. If Ohio State hits a few explosive plays, that game does look different. And I understand that at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, but TCU is known for that. So if TCU can get a couple of broken plays to work in their favor, I think it stays close. But like you mentioned, when you just look at the statistical standpoint and the player profiles, and I put this in air quotes, so if you're listening, like TCU is the weakest team of the four, just simply on paper, but they still have things that happen throughout their games that says maybe they can't get completely blown out. I could be wrong, but Michigan does what Kansas State does better, and we saw what happened.
Offensively, on paper, these teams are very evenly matched. Legitimately, they're 6th and 7th in scoring offense in the country. The only thing that separates them is 0.2 points. Michigan averages 40.1. TCU averages 40.3. And you go down the offensive statistics, they're very, very similar all the way across the board. TCU is one of the most balanced offenses in the country. In passing offense, they're 25th. In rushing offense, they're 25th. Like they're legitimately, they're top 25 in both passing and rushing offense. Michigan, not as balanced, but when it comes down to it, their total offense is 27th, TCU's is 16th. Like, these offenses are very evenly matched. Where I see the gigantic difference is Michigan has an elite defense and TCU has a defense that has nearly lost them a lot of games, but their offense made up for it. Jack, this tells a story of a Michigan team that's just about to beat the shit out of TCU. That's what I think.
Yeah. I keep going back and forth with what you're saying. I think Michigan has almost an advantage in every facet of the game, like you just said. I do think TCU is a little bit better than you're leading on. I do think their defense is a little bit better. This is something we talked about for a while. Their defense is definitely more of a unit that is their weak point. But let's not forget that this is a Michigan team that was struggling to score a lot of points against teams like, Illinois had a good defense. So, but it's not like this is the most explosive offense in the world. Coming into that Ohio State Michigan game, there was questions about JJ McCarthy. I do think TCU, if there's a way to beat this team, you have to have JJ McCarthy beat you, and that's possible, but I think you can live with that. Then the offense perspective, they need to hit some explosive plays, like Kayce said. 7.5 is a lot of points. I'm definitely going to be taking TCU plus the points, but would I be shocked if Michigan wins this 31-14? No.
I do think sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go.
No, I was going to say, I think that when you talk about TCU's defense too, which we did all season, it really depends on what shows up. And Bijan Robinson and Texas ground game, regardless of where Texas ended up, Bijan Robinson is one of the best running backs in the country, and TCU was able to slow that aspect of Texas offense down. So can they bottle up Donovan Edwards the same way, which, seems like it's almost impossible because we know how good not only he was all season, but Blake Corum, and having them both was deadly throughout the season. But then we saw other games, like we mentioned with the Kansas State game, where they couldn't stop the ground game at all and gave up 200 plus yards on the ground. So if TCU's defense plays the way that they did against Texas, they can slow Michigan's offense down enough to make JJ McCarthy do things. If they can't, then yeah, I'm the same way as Jack. Like, would it surprise me if it's, 45-17 type of game? No. But I do think that TCU's defense should get a little bit more credit because they have shown the ability to stop what Michigan's best advantage is, and that's their running backs.
Well, McCarthy's interesting in that most of the year he was not needed, and when he was needed, he wasn't all that good. And then you get to the two most important games of the season, the Ohio State game on the road and the Big Ten championship game, and he was electric in both games. He was awesome. So is his inability to stand out the first 11 games on him, or is it just the fact that he wasn't featured and wasn't put in a spot where he had to be good, where they were just using Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards and just running? Because, again, when it got to nut cutting time in Columbus, Ohio, J.J. McCarthy made 3 or 4 huge, gigantic plays in the passing game and won that football game for him. So
I think
he's interesting to me because I don't know that he hasn't shown that he's all that good, but when he has had to, he has.
I think that answer to me, at least in my opinion, is that cliche of like, he doesn't have to do too much. I think we say that more in the NFL than in college. It's like, if you can get a quarterback that doesn't have to do too much, but you have everything around him, that like the defense can win games. I mean, you see that happen. JJ McCarthy, I feel like what we saw him do at the end of the season is actually how good he is. He just didn't have to do a whole lot. He could just delegate who was going to run the ball, and they were going to run the ball well. And a lot of teams couldn't contain those guys. And as soon as I said, I realized that happens way more in college than the NFL. However, when you look at what he was able to do against Ohio State, whose defense we talked about all year as well, and that it was better than last year's, it had a lot of issues still, but he was able to do it in a game where it wasn't like they, no offense, they weren't playing like Rutgers at the end of the season to get into the playoff. They were playing their bitter rival, and he showed he could do it. So I think he is really good. I think the ground game and being able to stop those explosive plays is 10 times more important for TCU to put that pressure on him on a much bigger stage than he has been this season.
Well, one other element here is the fact that, TCU has been doubted all season, and they keep coming through. So anybody doubting TCU does so at their own peril, because they have proven the doubters wrong all year, me being one of them. Secondly, any concern, or not concern here, Jack, but what about the fact that Michigan was here last year? They came to the playoff. They played in a playoff game. It's not going to be new to them. It's not going to be foreign to them. They got destroyed in that bowl game, but maybe they got that pushing them a little bit. But this is not unfamiliar territory for them, whereas TCU's had a month off, and they've had to think about how big this game is, and they've never been here before. I feel like that weighs heavily in Michigan's favor too.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a factor. I would say it's something that the Michigan players have been talking about all week. They talked about last time they went down to Miami. It felt more like a vacation than they played a football game. And then they were like, oh my God, we're going up against the best team in the country. This year, they're saying it's more of a business trip. I mean, the fact that that was even a thing is kind of ridiculous, because it's the college football playoff, but whatever. I don't think even if they played their best game, they're beating Georgia last year. All that being said, yes, it's going to be tough. And TCU hasn't been in these situations, but they haven't been in these situations coming into this year at all. They were never 6-0, this team. They were never 8-0, having to beat Texas on the road. They were never in the Big 12 championship before. And they showed up in those games. I expect them to show up, but they have to play perfect. Like, Max Duggan can't have those bad interception throws. No. If he does that, and you give, especially if you turn the ball over in your own territory, it's like that's a recipe for a complete disaster for TCU.
I agree. And there is an element of that magic that, the horned frog magic, the hypnotoad, all of those things, like those things usually show how true they actually are in the college football playoff, because you don't go against the elite and the best of the best in the country and magic go your way to where you can win that game. So I totally understand, Brandon, where you're coming from, and looking at this and saying, this is going to be a blowout. Like I said, I still think Michigan wins the game. I just don't think it's going to get as out of control as you do, but it really does come down to, just if they can, I believe if they can slow down the ground game at all, and they can put more pressure on JJ McCarthy than he's seen, that it could be closer. Because, I think he only threw like 3 or 4 interceptions all year. Again, he wasn't throwing the ball a million times, but if they can just put pressure on the passing game and be able to slow the running game down a little bit, I think it stays close, but I'm still taking Michigan.
Well, just listen to this. And this is, I just want to say these stats, because this is the best team they played all year. Michigan's the best team TCU's played all year. I don't think there's any debate about that. And this is what TCU's bringing to the table defensively. To slow down J.J. McCarthy, to slow down Jim Harbaugh with a month to prepare, to slow down the best offensive line in the country. Michigan, TCU's pass defense ranks 83rd in the country, gave up 235 yards a game. Their rush defense, 64th in the country, gave up 150 yards a game. Their total defense, 74th in the country. Sacks, they don't get any sacks. They're 67th in the country. Like, where is it going to come from? Did they use the last month to magically get elite on defense so they can slow down a Michigan offense that, again, is number 7 in the country in total offense? I don't see it. Oh, excuse me, I'm reading Ohio State's number 7 in scoring offense. Excuse me. It doesn't paint a pretty picture, and I think that you can almost always count on a blowout in the playoffs, at least one, and I think this is that game.
On my flight to Tucson, there were a lot of TCU fans because I was flying out of Dallas, and even just like listening to them talk, at the gate, and then, just amongst themselves, there's even the element of, they weren't even saying like, oh, we're going to go in there, it's going to be a great game. It's like, we're going to give them hell. We're really going to put up a fight. And that, to me, and granted the fans aren't playing, but that is the aura around this game. It's the vibe. It's like, you're going to have to go to war in order to beat Michigan. And TCU fans also know the same thing that TCU players and Max Duggan has said is that, they were counted out all year. People were continuously wrong about it. But those things usually show their true colors in the college football playoff. And Michigan just, obviously played a hell of a season. They're really good, but there's still something about this TCU team that I can't just look at and say, all right, this 2022 season was magic. It was special. They're going to get their absolute doors blown off, and that's the end of that. But I could be dead wrong. I could be talking in the middle between the first and second quarter and being like, well, that was cute in the Big 12. Welcome to the big leagues, but maybe not.
All right. Before we get to the other game, Jack, did you see Pete Thamel's latest tweet? I saw you looking down. You might have just seen it.
Oh no, what did he say?
So Pete Thamel's latest tweet: sources, Big Ten Commissioner Kevin Warren has emerged as a top candidate to be the next president, CEO of the Chicago Bears. The process is expected to wrap up in the coming weeks. So the Big Ten might be commissionerless. Kevin Warren, who had some highs and lows as Big Ten commissioner, could be on the way to the Chicago Bears. We'll see. That's interesting. Do you go from the Big Ten commissioner to the Chicago Bears CEO?
It feels strange.
Whatever. Probably a lot less.
I'm sure
stress.
the money's not a step down, right?
Probably a lot less stress too. All right. So
and think about this: if you're him, you don't have to deal with any of he was obviously the one that helped make the decision and was an integral part. But once USC and UCLA enter the Big Ten and all of it, the craziness, he's like, well, I don't know. I'm in Chicago now, fellas. Deal with the next guy.
All right. So if we talked about TCU, Michigan. Now let's talk about the nightcap of Georgia, Ohio State. And a lot of people, if they were to have the choice, which one of these games would be a blowout, would choose this game. I don't. I think this is your classic. I think this is the game that's going to be thrilling to the end, and I think Ohio State could win the game. I got to talk about Ohio State real quick. I don't know that I've ever seen a team thrown away as much as Ohio State got thrown away after one bad half against Michigan. They had one bad half this season, and they got their dicks knocked in the dirt against Michigan. They got embarrassed in the second half. But this is still a team filled with elite talent. This is still a very good team. And they got absolute – people talk about Ohio State like they went 4-8 this season. They went 11-1, lost one game to a team who's number 2 seed in the playoff, and now you're giving them another chance. You're giving them new life. As good as Georgia is, I promise you, they would much rather be playing TCU this Saturday than Ohio State. I promise you that.
I don't disagree with that. I do, I was very much on the side of throwing them away. Again, not to rehash old arguments and beat a dead horse because it doesn't fucking matter because the playoffs are here. I don't think that when you look at, we look at all the teams that are playing, it's like, well, their last game was the conference championship. Ohio State's last game, they got their dicks kicked in by their bitter rival by, a ton of points while they were favored by 10. Regardless, first of all, I didn't think Ohio State would get in the playoff because I thought USC would win, but I very much am in the camp of now looking back, I threw them away probably a little bit more than I should have. However, what I've never wavered from and what I've never looked away from is how good Georgia is. And I know we'll talk about Georgia, but Georgia, even the close games that they had, those games were they were sleepy. They didn't look like a bad football team to me. Ohio State has shown that they can be beaten. Georgia has not. Georgia has not shown me that they can actually be beaten thus far. But I do agree. And I will admit that I was able to throw Ohio State away much faster than I probably should have. But I still think that half of football tells a bigger story about this team and where they are capable of being beaten.
Yeah, the thing about Georgia and how good they are and everything, Ohio State has shown they can be beaten and Georgia hasn't. That is a true statement. Georgia also hasn't played anybody as good as Michigan, and Ohio State has. And that goes a long way to me. The best team Georgia's played is Tennessee, and they handled them pretty good, but I'm not sure Tennessee was all that great. I mean, they were fine. But, Jack, did you throw Ohio State away?
So I look at this game and think Georgia's just a better Michigan. I would say Stetson Bennett is better than J.J. McCarthy. However, Georgia's struggled running the ball all year. They haven't really shown to be an elite run team. And I think that's what really won Michigan the game. They kind of exclusively worked off of play action passes and then massive runs from Donovan Edwards. And Georgia ranks 69th in EPA per rush, which is not great. All that being said, I do think that's a very good narrative and very good perspective that we may have thrown away Ohio State too fast. This is a very good football team. CJ Stroud's a very good quarterback. They have elite receivers, elite running backs. They have elite players all over their defense. I keep going back to the fact that this Ohio State team should have beat Michigan, but didn't, and really just got kind of manhandled in that second half, and that's a little concerning. Mm-hmm. But, if they didn't, let's say one of those passes J.J. McCarthy threw was dropped. Let's say Donovan Edwards fell instead of running for an 80-yard touchdown, which is whatever, or CJ Stroud completed one more pass. Would this game really be a 7 points or 6.5 point spread? I don't know. I think Georgia and Ohio State are very similar. So that's the spread's a little bit wide. I think this will be a very good game to look at from a total perspective and the over. But yeah, I mean, I think I'll end up on Ohio State. And I said before that the closer game would be TCU Michigan, but I think we may have our first playoff that has two close games.
I know I'm going to end up on Ohio State. 6.5 is crazy. 6.5 is crazy. This will be a 3-point game in the fourth quarter, and somebody's going to win late. The thing about Georgia is people look at them and they see the wrong things. People, if I ask a casual college football fan right now, tell me about Georgia's football team. Oh, elite defense, offense is fine. It's really kind of the opposite. Like Georgia's defense is very, very, very good. But their offense is also real fucking good. Mm-hmm. Looking at these, Georgia and Ohio State in total offense in the country are side by side. Georgia's 7th, Ohio State's 8th. Georgia averages a lot of passing yards, and you don't think so. And I made fun of Stetson Bennett for making the Heisman. They can throw the ball, they can run the ball, they keep the ball. They have long, sustained drives. They're very good at that. They don't really turn the ball over. They are a very efficient and a very good offense. Defensively, they're not the headhunters they were last year. They're not the headhunters they were. They had the number 1 pick who went to the Jags. They had these defensive linemen that would just knock your dick in the dirt and just destroy you. They don't really get after the quarterback very much. They only had 26 sacks this season in 13 games. That's good for 70th in the country. They don't, and Ohio State offensive line only gave up 7 sacks all year. So they're not going to be able – I don't think they're going to put a whole lot of pressure on C.J. Stroud. It's beyond the line of scrimmage where Georgia's elite. I don't know, man. I see these two teams, and everybody puts Georgia up here, and because of what happened to Ohio State and Michigan, put them down here. And I think it's more like up here and up here. I think these are two of the 3 best teams in the country.
If we look at Georgia's – we think of them as this elite pass defense too. I don't think that's necessarily true. If you look at their numbers, it's not necessarily amazing. It's their
They have the
EPA
49. They have the 49th best pass defense in America.
Yeah. And then if you look at it from like expected points added per pass, it's 22nd. That's not that good. Their defensive success rate ranks 8th in the country, and their pass success rate on defense is 18th. You know, like this is a team with CJ Stroud and Marvin Harrison. I don't know if there will be player props on the Barstool Sportsbook, but if there are, I would definitely look for like a massive game from Marvin Harrison, a massive game from CJ Stroud. And I think with that and explosiveness, that's going to be a real, if they can shut down. And then on top of it, so against the rush, they're very good. But on top of it, it's like if you can't stop this pass, and you, like you said, you laid out those numbers. If you can't get pressure on CJ Stroud, it's going to, like, he exclusively works incredibly well from protected pockets. And when he has a protected pocket, he can pick you apart, man. So you could really see a situation where even if Georgia goes up 14, CJ Stroud, ping, 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 it's tied game.
The most valuable real estate in this game to me is not going to be on the field. It's going to be in the heads of Ohio State players. When they got down against Michigan, they kind of quit. They kind of folded. They kind of ran for cover. They kind of they kind of laid down. But for a month, they've had to hear how shitty they are, how overrated they were, how soft they are. What does that do to you? Does that mean a month later you're going to come out and you're going to stay soft, or are you going to come out and fucking play football? The answer to that question is like, I think you'll know if Ohio State's going to be in this game in the fourth quarter in like 5 seconds. Like if you just see the first couple of plays, you'll know the kind of effort level you're getting. Because if they run for the hills again, Georgia will embarrass them. I don't think we're going to be talking after this game the way that we did after that game with the body language, because we talked a lot about that. The body language in the second half, CJ Stroud, you go down the list. But my question for both of you, when you look at, we can look at stats, we can look at where these defenses are ranked, but do you think Georgia's defense is better than Michigan's? Because that, to me, when you look at what happened in the second half of that game, and it wasn't all just the players, by the way, there was a lot of play calls that didn't make sense. We put a lot of heat on Ryan Day as well, but it's just, to me, it's like, I think that if I had to pick between those two defenses, I would still take Georgia. And the way that Michigan was able to have CJ Stroud contained more than we had seen all season does tell me that they don't have to be the headhunters and the elite defense they were last year. They have to play really well, but that their offense is good enough to where it does balance that out. Do you think that they are better defense than Michigan? That's what it kind of comes down to. I think they're probably equal. I don't know, better or worse. I think they're very, very, very similar to Michigan. Michigan probably a little bit better pass rushers, but Georgia's so good on the back end, man. They're very, very good on the back end. Ryan Day is a very important man in this equation too, because I did think, you just pointed it out, I thought their play calling was bizarre against Michigan in the first half. When that game was back and forth, they threw down the field a couple times. They had a fade to Marvin Harrison Jr. for a touchdown. In the second half, he played like they were in overtime, and if they crossed the first down line, somebody was going to get eaten by an alligator or something. Like, they did not throw the ball down the field. They were scared. They were timid. They were scared, and they called plays like they were scared. You can't do that. If you play not to lose, you're going to lose every time. And he just got to let it fly. He's just got to let CJ Stroud throw the ball down the field. And if it gets picked off, it gets picked off, whatever. You can't worry about that.
Well, and that's why when, we go through all these statistics and we say, if they can't get pressure on CJ Stroud and Marvin Harrison Jr., then they're going to have a day. Well, that also comes into fruition if they call plays to let that happen. We did not see that happen. So I would assume with over a month to prepare for this, I'm sure Ryan Day has been reading things or been told things. Like, he knows the mistakes that he made. And if he doesn't, he's a moron. I'm sure he does. So I don't anticipate that happening to that degree again, but that is a gigantic factor, because it wasn't like Michigan beat them making CJ Stroud throw the ball and he couldn't do it. They didn't do what they were best at in the second half of that game. Michigan kicked their doors off. But if Georgia can do the same thing and Ryan Day plays the playbook the way he did, that's a recipe for disaster, because we've seen it happen. So if you think their defenses are pretty equal and pretty similar, then that's a blueprint for Georgia to say, okay, well, they're going to run scared in these situations because we've actually seen it happen on the field. I don't know if that's going to happen though.
There's another blueprint that if Georgia's able to follow it, they could win easily as well. We saw JJ McCarthy hit 3 big passes off of play action, and JJ McCarthy is not as good as Stetson Bennett at this point in his career. And Bennett has Brock Bowers, the best tight end in the country. He's got McConkey, a very good receiver. If McCarthy was able to hit these wide open play action passes, what's Stetson Bennett going to be able to do? Because if Ohio State hasn't shored that part of their defense up, then it could be a long day. Because Stetson Bennett, it'll be Georgia will come to the line, get a 1-yard run for 2nd and 9, and you think, okay, well, this is a slow, boring offense. He'll fake it, and then Brock Bowers suddenly wide open 40 yards down the field, and he makes a throw that anybody can make, and you think, oh wow, that's something. If Ohio State hasn't fixed that play action defense, could be a long day. But I think they probably have, and therefore, I think an Ohio State Michigan national championship game is not a pipe dream. I think it's a very distinct possibility. I don't know that I'm picking Ohio State to win this game. I know I am confidently picking Ohio State to stay within 6.5 points because I think this is going to be a war of a football game.
I also look at, when we're talking about Ryan Day and you talk about important characters in this game. 2 years ago, we talked about Kirby Smart not being able to get over that hump. He can't beat Nick Saban. He can't win those big games. He does everything he can to get himself in those situations. And then that narrative, for cliche terms, for lack of better terms, died last year. So if I'm looking at the coaching staffs, I'm looking at the decision-making that's going to be made in this game, and I think most people that watch college football would agree with this wholeheartedly. I'm so much more confident in everything that Kirby Smart does versus what Ryan Day does. Now, is that going to tell me that this game is going to be a blowout solely because of that? Absolutely not. But Kirby Smart knows how to win these games. He knows how to put his guys in the best situations to win these games. And a lot of people look back at the Kent State game and the Missouri game and say, well, they did kind of slow down against much worse competition. He does not do that in big games with this team. And this defense has stayed pretty good, not as elite as last year, but stayed pretty good. This offense has been so much better. And to me, just every single box is being checked by Georgia. However, I hope Jack is right, and I want to agree with him here. I think that we could possibly see 2 games in the playoff that are so much better than we've seen in the past, both of them at the same time in the same day. And that would be so great for the sport as a whole, and also great for people like us who cover it, because covering blowout games fucking sucks.
The 4 seed has won the national title just as often as the 1 seed. Did you know that?
Which is crazy.
And I will say, we're getting on Ryan Day. I mean, Ryan Day has been in this situation before where he's an underdog in a college football playoff game against a defending national champion and beat them. He ended up losing to a really, really good Alabama team. But it's not like Ryan Day won't, there's more questions about his coaching than I think Ohio State fans would like at this point in his career. But he has, and even games that he lost the year prior when Clemson against, or I guess that wasn't a defending national champion. But
no, it wasn't.
I digress. All that being said, he has been in these games and won them, and even games that he's lost, they've been close.
I might wake up on Saturday and go ahead and predict Ohio State to win this game. As of now, I'm just going to predict this game is a 3-point game with 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter. I think this game is tight, and I think they're going to absolutely give Georgia everything they can handle.
I will say, though, Georgia wins this game. We're 1 game away from having to discuss Stetson Bennett as one of the best college quarterbacks in the history of college football.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Okay. It's
Brandon,
he's right. He's
No,
right.
but Brandon's
I know.
gonna
I was about to
hate
say
that.
your face, the way that your face slowly reacted to every word that was coming out of his mouth was very funny. Because he's right.
He's right. Whatever. Put that aside.
We'll get there when we get there. I was just
We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Now
that's what we'll get. But I will say that, not that I would ever anticipate you owing Stetson Bennett an apology, because I don't think that you should do that. And I think that your takes on him going to New York were very similar to a lot of people's for good reason. But it comes down to what I mentioned earlier. It's like quarterbacks do what they need to do in the systems. I mean, we've talked about it with Nick Saban a ton. Like, he's had quarterbacks that have won national championships that you wouldn't put athletically up against the best. You wouldn't put talented wise up against the best, but what they do on the field, you have to give them those credits. I think if Georgia, we'll get to it when we get to it. If Georgia wins this, not only are we talking about Kirby Smart being the next dynasty and being the next, version of Nick Saban and all of that, we're also talking about just like a massive shift just across the SEC. We talk a lot about Alabama's dynasty potentially being dead. It's not, but potentially if they win another national title, Georgia has absolutely taken over Alabama for right now. There's no question about that.
Speaking of massive shifts in college football, I've been working on this take and I'm going to try to talk my way through it. The seismic shift that could happen if Ohio State beats Georgia and Ohio State plays Michigan for a national title, and now you have two Big Ten teams playing, the SEC might be losing its grip. And if you're watching these bowl games, and I said this a couple of weeks ago, the SEC West wasn't that good this year. LSU won the West, and they weren't very good. And Alabama wasn't as good as they have been. You watch these bowl games, Ole Miss getting embarrassed, Arkansas needing, almost giving up a miracle comeback, Florida, Missouri getting destroyed. The SEC hasn't been all that strong. Now, Georgia is a different animal, and Georgia's right now carrying the conference on their back. However, this reminds me of 2006, and that's when the SEC dominance took hold. Ohio State and Michigan had played 1 versus 2, and Ohio State won 42-39. A lot of people thought Ohio State Michigan should rematch in the national title. That didn't happen. They played a 1-loss Florida team. They were double-digit favorites, and Florida beat the shit out of Ohio State. Beat the shit out of them, 41-14, and the SEC was off and running, won the next 7 national titles and won whatever in the next 15, 20 years. And the SEC has been the dominant force in college football since then. However, we get here now, the Big Ten is right on their heels. And if Ohio State was to beat Georgia, there could be a nice bookend because the SEC dominance started when Florida beat Ohio State. It could stop if Ohio State were to beat Georgia and then plays Michigan for a national championship.
So one of the questions I wanted to ask you on the last episode before Christmas, but we ran out of time, when you were gone, when you were in Wyoming, getting your ass literally kicked by a bull, we ranked the conferences for the season, because I think that a lot of times, and I mean, we're doing it right now for good reason, and it's a fair argument, but when you get to bowl season and you see these teams play, the argument that happens every single year is, well, look how the SEC did, look how the Big Ten did in bowl season. And then everybody uses that to predict what the best conferences in the country are. That to me does not matter until the playoff is expanded. When the playoff is expanded, then we'll actually see these games that truly matter who the best conferences are. However, I like to look at the regular season and the championship games and say, who do we think the best conferences were? And Jack and Katie put the Big Ten at 3. And I said, I disagree with that solely because when you look at the top of the conference, you've now got 2 teams in the college football playoff, and Penn State, who we shit on all year, only lost to those 2 teams. When you look at the SEC, you've got Georgia and you had Tennessee with Hendon Hooker. And then of course, Alabama is still there and whatever. But in reality, the Big Ten has these 2 powerhouses now that you can make the argument would put them higher. And the SEC is Georgia and everybody else right now. I mean, it's hard for me to say that the Big Ten is not a better conference this season at the top.
I don't know that I would say the Big Ten. I don't know that I would say the Big Ten is. I'd say the SEC is better from 1 to 14 for sure.
1 to 14. That also comes down to we argued, or not argued. We had this conversation on that exact episode. Depends on how you're judging. Are you judging it from top to bottom, like who the worst of the bottoms are? Or
if you're judging every conference's best team, probably SEC still. If you're judging every conference by the best 2 teams, that's when the Big Ten has a big time legitimate argument.
And if the Big Ten has a national championship this year, which by the way, it's very few and far between that I see on social media, at least. I know we saw it a lot more, but the people that were arguing, which turns out most of them were Alabama fans, but the people that were arguing that an Ohio State, Michigan national championship wouldn't be absolutely fucking electric. Like, that makes no sense to me, because we've seen SEC championship games that have been really great too. But the Big Ten proving that the cream of the crop in that conference, which they all happen to be in the same division, being the best, that to me says, well, hey, like Alabama's, slowly declining. They're going to be fine. They still have Nick Saban. And yeah, Georgia's there, but who's after Georgia? What's next?
Yeah.
I don't know. I know who's after Michigan right now. It's Ohio State. I know who's after them. It's Penn State, who won 10 games this year. So
the SEC still has Alabama that just put together the best class in the history of.
Oh, definitely. But they're not in the playoff.
And then, yeah, and I guess you're talking about just this year, but then Tennessee's right there too. LSU's with right there as well. I mean, I would say like it's possible, and I actually think that's a really great storyline from Brandon. And you have your points, Casey, about the top of the top. But all that being said, yeah, I'd be really surprised if the Big Ten after those three teams was really bad, extremely bad.
And I don't think Alabama is dead, by the way. I hate that argument as well. Like Alabama is still Alabama. Nick Saban is still there. I'm just talking about for this year. And also like an Ohio State, Michigan national title sounds like absolute college football porn to me. I mean,
all right. Before we get out of here, a couple more bowl games to talk about. Oregon, North Carolina was very good yesterday.
Bo Nix, baby.
Oregon comes from behind 10 in the fourth quarter, wins 28-27. Bo Nix coming back next year. We're going to be in a very good quarterback situation next year in Pac-12 especially, but all over the country, you got a lot of guys coming back. Michael Penix coming back, KJ Jefferson at Arkansas coming back, Bo Nix coming back. Drake May coming back. A lot of great, of course, Caleb Williams coming back. A lot of great quarterbacks in college football next year. Ole Miss, Texas Tech last night. Texas Tech beat the shit out of them. I enjoyed that. I just wanted y'all to know that.
I figured that you might a little bit.
Also, just such an undisciplined team. Ole Miss is.
Listen. They just were never very good, and the way these teams, some of their schedules lay out, it just creates these myths and these auras. Ole Miss started 7-0 and didn't beat a goddamn soul. Their last 6 games, they lost 5 of them. The only one they won, they beat Texas A&M. Sorry, Casey, but bad Texas A&M team by 3 points. Like Ole Miss was a bad football team this year. They got to pretend to be a good one, and they're pretending to be a good one. Got Lane Kiffin $9 million a year, and I understand it's a bowl game. Well, when you like the smell of your own fart so much that you're going for it on 4th down at your own 9-yard line, that something's wrong. Like that's crazy.
Also, when is Lane Kiffin going to beat a good team?
He hasn't done it. And listen, his schedule has been so friendly at Ole Miss. He has not beaten anybody.
And it's like, at what point is it like, hey, like you gotta win these games, man. Like I get it. It's like, oh yeah, like the fact. I mean, I guess their best win this year was Kentucky, and that was a lucky win.
Yeah, it was lucky as hell.
I will say that watching that game last night, it had the same feeling to me as when we were watching Ole Miss play when we had already, or I know Brandon, you had said it 100%, but all of us had already been convinced ourselves that he was gone to Auburn. That's the way that game looked to me. It was like, does he know he's staying at Ole Miss? Does he know that like he just got this massive raise and extension? But I will say that on the other side of this, like to give credit to Texas Tech, I know they didn't have a perfect year, but what they're building in Lubbock right now is really exciting, especially given the fact that Texas and OU will be going to the SEC in just a couple seasons. Like what they're doing in Lubbock is definitely not something to ignore, because they've had this season, they've proven that they've got a coach and a guy that can get this team to win, and to beat Ole Miss that embarrassingly, like that's something for the offseason for Texas Tech to really build on.
Joey McGuire as him, and then I mean another guy that has really done a great job, and you missed him a lot this year. Kayce was, sorry, I'm blanking right now. Duke's head coach.
Elko.
Oh, Mike Elko.
Mike Elko.
Mike Elko. I was watching that game yesterday and I was like, oh my God. I miss you, sir. He took
a Duke team that they lost 2 straight seasons of 9 losses, and took a Duke team that, not that Cutcliffe didn't leave anything behind, but it wasn't great. And he immediately turned them around. Riley Leonard is looking like one of the best quarterbacks returning for next year as well. Him and Drake May are going to have a hell of a competition at the top of the ACC. You're right, Brandon. Next year could really be the year of the quarterback. I mean, like we've really never seen before.
And then there was a Liberty Bowl yesterday, Arkansas 55, Kansas 53. I always hate when there's an epic comeback, a miracle comeback, and the team ends up losing. There's something unsatisfying about that.
Oh, so unsatisfying.
They were down 38-13. They came back to tie it at 38. And listen, Arkansas fans, you got to come to Daddy at some point and tell me I was right, because that guy cannot coach. Sam Pittman can't coach. He didn't use any timeouts. They were running plays with 20 seconds left. He did not know what to do in that game. And Barry Odom's not there to save y'all anymore, an actual head coach. It's going to be interesting times in Arkansas very soon. But they ended up winning the game 55-53. And Arkansas, I don't know what it is about that school. They find themselves in more of these crazy games than anybody. They were in the first 7 overtime game ever. They were in – I can just think off the top of my head, the last couple of years, they were in a 51-50 game against Mississippi State. They were in 2 separate 52-51 games against Ole Miss. Now 55-53 game. Like, they find themselves in these games more than anybody.
Well, think about, I know that the last few years has looked different, but every single year when we preview the A&M Arkansas game, it's always like, even though A&M's always the better team, or was at that time, those games were always nuts. Like, Arkansas finds themselves in not only games that are crazy, that games that when you're watching, you're like, holy shit, like, this game is awesome. I mean, Jack, in the group text last night said this is like the best bowl game ever. Because when you're watching it, everything that could possibly happen was happening. And I'll give Jack all the credit in the world. I know we talked about it before we started recording. We talked about it on Twitter last night. Like, Jack saying when the game should be completely over. I don't remember what the exact score was, Jack, when you tweeted Kansas is going to come back and make this interesting. The Arkansas fans had a meltdown in the mentions, and to go back and read it at the end of the game. And I understand Arkansas won, but still, we'll talk about how, it's just unfair for the 2-point conversions to be deciding that game. But Arkansas fans had a meltdown. You were 100% right, because this team is never truly able to put people away. And on that onside kick with 40 seconds left, however much time was left, they didn't even look like they tried. It was bizarre. It wasn't like a weird onside kick where you've got to like peel people off of each other to figure out who actually has the ball. Kansas just very clearly got the onside kick. How does that happen in that situation? That makes no sense to me.
It's Arkansas. How do you let Arkansas, if there's something about Arkansas, it's one, they play incredibly entertaining, crazy games, and then 2, special teams. I keep going back to the North Texas clip where the guy just, nobody went and tackled him, and he went and scored a touchdown. That was 5 years ago or something. But yeah, it's just Arkansas. It's whatever it is. There's something in the water down there.
What? It is so entertaining. But reading through the mentions, Jack, I have to tell you, I must say, when you said you love Arkansas fans, especially the women, I was a little bit offended. They wwere the meanest to me all season and the meanest to Brandon. You're going against family here.
Well, the stupidest fan base in America deserves the dumbest games. I think we can wrap it up there. We have a playoff. We have the Barstool Sports Arizona Bowl coming up tomorrow at 4:30 Eastern time. Yes.
Just really quick. Do you, you made a face when I said it. Do you agree that 2-point conversions shouldn't end games like that, or do you like it?
That is, we're going to pick that up in the offseason. I think it's one of the dumbest things in the history of college football. I'm a hypocrite.
I'm a hypocrite because I love penalty kicks in soccer. I think they're awesome. Like with the World Cup.
Soccer's a different game, though. The players are on the field for 120 minutes, same players. Football, players get off the field, they rest, whatnot. The 2 points, like penalty kicks, is like at a certain point in soccer. If you don't win the game, you don't win the game. It comes down to that. It's still dumb.
Let's have that discussion in the offseason.
But I felt so bad at the end of that with Jason Bean. What was that? He threw it away.
Jalen Daniels was so impressed by it, he entered the transfer portal this morning. All right.
So timing for Arizona Bowl. So Jack mentioned we need to say Eastern. So I'm already off on when all these things happen.
Barstool Sports Arizona Bowl tomorrow, barstool.tv at 4:30 Eastern time. I guess that means you and I will be on the air at 4:00 Eastern time. because the game kicks off at 4:30 Eastern time.
I think it's 3:45 Eastern. That
Oh,
we're
that's
on.
what me and you are going on the air?
I believe. Again, I can look it up really quick if we need to, but I believe that the coverage starts at 3:45 Eastern, 1:45 local time. We will be on the air, and then the game kicks off at, I think, what, 4:15, 4:20 Eastern?
Well, now you've just, I'm almost certain it's 4:30.
It is.
Yeah.
It is, but I think we're on it. I think we're on.
Yeah, but you just said this game kicks off at 4:15, no, it kicks
No,
off.
I think that we go live at 3:45 though. We do.
Yeah, but you just said it kicks off at 4:15. You're
Well,
confusing.
then if we're a 30-minute show, but we're live at 3:45, what happens?
You're confusing everybody. Stop. The game kicks off at 4:30 tomorrow, everybody.
The game does kick off at 4:30, but
All
I
right.
think we start at 3:45.
What are you doing?
But because I want people to watch our pregame show, Brandon, I don't want them to tune
Now
in.
you got them all confused.
Well, that's what I'm trying
If
to
you
find it.
3:45, if you
Thank you.
go on Twitter and you'll see if they're live or not. And if they're not live, they'll be live in 15 minutes after that. So that's just your day. And,
Better
All right.
earlier than
I
later.
gotta get
because
out of here before she absolutely.
I won't
has
ruin
people
it, but I
watching
will
another
s-
game.
The game's
will-
canceled because the game's canceled because of Kayce.
It's
She
my
doesn't know.
fault.
She didn't get there on time.
But I will say that the pregame show, we have a lot of things planned that are very funny. Frank is doing the coin toss. I think Jerry's running out to get the teas. You've got Caleb and Roan. I talked to Caleb this morning at breakfast. He's excited. There's so much shit that's going on. Spider's doing something. This is one of those games where even if you couldn't give a shit less about the game on the field, the entertainment will be there. But go to the Barstool Sportsbook app and put a bet on one of these teams and watch us, because responsibly, of course, very, very responsibly. Go do that. It's going to be a blast.
All right. That is the Barstool Sports Arizona Bowl tomorrow. The playoff on Saturday. That's unnecessary roughness.